So one of our interview prep Discord member was asked to build a memory game in a Google interview. So I decided, let me just try it out myself and show you guys how you can do it as well. So as you can see over here, we have this board of 4x4 boxes, but we can change this grid size as well. Like for example, we can keep 3, 2, or we can keep 5, 6, whatever, right? Let's just take a standard board size of 4. And over here, whenever you click on a box, it will reveal the number inside of it. And when you click on another box, it will reveal another number. And if both of those numbers did not match, it's going to reset it. But let's say if it did. So let's say over here and here, yeah, you can see both of them matched and now they've turned green. And this is what a memory game is all about. So if I update it now, so this game is about memorizing where different tiles exist. So over here, you can see, yeah, I've won this. So now it's going to show me that you've won. And we can click on this play again to play again. Or let's say if we are in the middle of the game and we want to reset this game, we can click on this reset game button over here and we can reset the whole board, right? It's going to shuffle all of the numbers again. And if you want to see more such interview preparation videos, just click the link in the description down below and check out my Frontend interview preparation course. So I've opened VS Code over here and let's just initialize a new React app. So I'm going to say npm create wait at latest and press enter. It's going to ask us if we want to proceed. Yes. Project game, I'm going to say memory game. Let's select React and JavaScript. Great. So right over here, we have a new memory game initialized. Let's just cd to inside of that folder. And I'm going to say npm install to install all of these dependencies inside of this package.json file, right? And also let's get rid of the things that we don't need, like this assets folder, delete everything inside of app.css, everything inside of index.css, and inside of app.jsx, I'm gonna get rid of all of these things, this state right here and everything inside of return. And I'll simply have a div which says subscribe to Roadside Coder, which you should if you haven't yet. So cool, all of those dependencies have installed. So I'm gonna say npm run dev to run it. Let's click on this link over here. Great, our app is running. Now what I'll do, I'll install Tailwind CSS. So I'll say wheat tailwind and you're gonna land on this website. Over here, we need to do npm install -d and install all of these three things. So okay, I'll just open a new terminal and paste it right over here. So it's going to install Tailwind inside of it. And now we also want to do npx tailwind css init -p, which will create a Tailwind configuration file inside of our project. So over here, you can see tailwind config.js. Now go inside this Tailwind config and we need to add some things. So just take this over here and I'll paste it right here so that it identifies that I need to check JS, TS, JSX, TSX files for the Tailwind code, and copy all of this code over here and paste it inside of index.css. That's all we need to do to set up Tailwind CSS and our styling library, right? So, okay, let's go on to app.jsx and start building it. So first of all, let's just create a components folder over here, components, and I'll create a memory game.jsx file inside of it, right? I'll say RAFCE memory game. And we will write our complete code inside of this particular component. So let's just import it right over here. Let's go on and see. Okay, cool. So now let's go on and plan our app first, right? So inside of this div, we're going to have 4 different things. First, this input, then our game board, then our, that win message, and then this button over here for play again or reset the game, right? So let's just write both of all of these things: input, game board, result, reset or play again button. Okay. Now, how many types of states are going to be inside of this? So first of all, and if you don't know, so state is actually just like a variable inside of React app, which is used for managing all of the data for that particular component. Like for example, we can use this use state hook, and it takes 2 things: the actual state and the function that is responsible for changing that particular state, right? And it takes an initial value as well. So I'll just keep 4 over here. So 4 will be the size of basically our grid, right? So I've named it grid size. We will also have a state which will contain all of our cards, right? Whatever cards that we have shuffled and kept inside of our board game. Now, whenever we flip a card or whenever a card gets solved, we need to keep track of both of these things over here as well, right? So I'm going to have two more states, one for flipped, which is going to be an empty array, one for solved, which is also going to be an empty array. Then whenever these cards are flipped, right, whenever these are solved actually, so we cannot click on them again, right? So they should be disabled. Now there will be a state called disabled, and similarly we will have a won state to decide if user has won that game or not, right? So cool, all of these states are what we will be needing to build this. So let's go on and first build our input. So let's just have a h1 over here above it. Let's just say memory game. Let's give it some class name of text 3xl, font to be bold. And if you have not used Tailwind before, so it's quite similar like Bootstrap. So it has classes like this, text 3xl, and when you hover on this, we can see the exact CSS styles that we have applied over here. And font bold is going to make the font bold. Margin bottom to be 6, which is going to be around 1.5 rem. Save this and see. Okay. For the container div, I'm going to have the class name of display flex. Flex direction is going to be column. Items are going to be center, so that everything is in the very center of the screen. So I'll say justify to be center as well. And minimum height of our screen will be 1vh. That is minimum height screen. Background is going to be gray 100, and let's keep some padding of 4 around it. Great. For our input component, I'm going to have a div which will contain two things. One is going to be the label, which will tell us grid size, and let's just say max can be 10. And below this label, I'm going to have a input tag of type number. ID is going to be grid size, and this ID we will provide it in this HTML so that for accessibility purposes, and this knows that which input this label belongs to. Let's provide the minimum and the maximum value. That is, minimum value is going to be 2, maximum value is going to be 10. Now we've created this state grid size for this one, right? So I'll say value to be grid size, and on change of this input, I'm going to call a function. I'll create a function over here, const handle grid size change. And we will provide this function right over here. Inside of this, we will write the logic, for changing this set grid size. So we'll come back to this. Let's just style this as well. So I'll give the class name of border to be 2, border gray of 300. Let's keep it rounded, padding horizontal to be 2, and padding vertical to be 1. Let's have a look. Okay, our style didn't get applied for some reason. So I'll just kill the server and restart it. Great, now we can see it. Amazing. For this div right here, I'll say class name margin bottom 4. For this label over here, I'll give margin right to be 2, so that it has some space between them. Yep, nice. Now, coming back to this handle grid size change function, we will take the event over here inside of the params, and whatever input that we get, that is e.target.value, we want to make sure that is an integer value, right? Not a float, or basically not a decimal value. So I'll say parse int. So this will convert whatever's inside of it. Like if it's a decimal value, it will convert it into a whole number or integer, right? So const size equals this. So this will be our final size. And after this, I'll say if size is more than or equal to 2 and size is less than or equals to 10, then I'll say set grid size to be this size over here. And these conditions right here are very important during the interviews. Sometimes we overlook these small things, and when later on interviewer, let's say they will ask us to keep the size to 11, then we will break this condition over here. So that is why we need to keep these safe checks over here to get those extra points during the interviews. All right, now next, let's write the logic for, generating all of the random cards that we will be rendering over here, right? So I'll create a function, const initialize game. And inside this function, we will write the logic, which will generate, let's say if the grid size is 4, it will generate 16 cards with, a pair of numbers, but they will be randomly placed inside of the grid. So first of all, we need to determine how many cards are going to be there. So const total cards, and it's going to be this grid size, right? So like grid size into grid size. So grid size into grid size. So if you remember, here we had grid size 4, right? So that's why we had 16 cards. So that's why this will be 16 in this case. Then after that, we need to, calculate how many pairs are going to be there. So const pair count, let's say, equals math dot floor. So math dot floor basically takes the lower value of decimal. So because we're gonna write total cards divide by 2. So let's say if total cards is 16, it's going to be 8. In this case, math dot floor is not needed. But let's say if total cards is 17, it will give us 18.5, right? So it will remove that dot 5 from it and just take 8 over here so that we have a whole number. Then after this, in this case, we had 16 total cards, right? So let's just write it over here. So if we had 16 cards, so this will be 8, right? 8 pairs is what we will be needing. Let's create an array of all of these 8 numbers. So I'll say const numbers equals, I'll create an array over here. So I'll say array, inside this, I'll say pair count. So basically this will create an empty array of this size, that is empty array of 8 items. And I'll say dot keys. So now over here, it will take all of the keys. That is, keys start from 0, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, it will go from 0 to 7. So it will fill the array with all of the keys from 0 to 7. Now, but we don't want it to start from 0, right? We want it to start from 1. So let's just do dot map. We will take each and every key n, and I'll say n plus 1, right? So now it will give us from 1 to 8 number inside of this numbers. Okay, so now that we have our numbers array, all we need to do is we need to have one more numbers array, and we need to shuffle both of these numbers array inside of our grid, right? So let's just create this. So I'll say const shuffled cards equals, I'll take this numbers, and again I'll take this numbers. Now it's not this simple, because this will just straight up keep both of them one after the other, right? That will be very predictable. So what we need to do over here, we need to shuffle them. So I'll say dot sort. I'll sort them randomly over here. So if you don't know about this sort function, let me just play a very quick short to explain you what this sort function is all about. Let's take an example. So we have this unsorted array, and if you want to sort this, we're just going to say unsorted dot sort. So let's see what this sort does. So it takes a compare function used to determine the order of the elements. Okay, so we have an example over here. If we take this array and we take a callback, something like this, and we have a and b. So if we take a comma b, and I'll say a minus b, so this should sort us the array. So if let's say a is this and b is this, as a is this, b is this, so a minus b, it's positive value, right? So what will happen if the positive value is there? Then it will put b before a, that is, it's sorting from ascending in the ascending order. So if I now console log this, and it will do this for every single element. Unsorted, and run this, you're gonna see it has sorted this in the ascending order. But if we were to do, let's say, b minus a, that is, we were to do 2 minus 5, then it will do it in the descending order. That is just like this. So to keep things random, what I'll say for this callback function, I'll say math.random minus 0.5. Now we don't know what kind of number will be generated over here. Let me show you. So if I take this math.random minus 5, you can see math.random gives us a random number between 0 and 1. If I say minus 0.5, you can see it gives me random number every single time, right? Sometimes it's minus, sometimes it's positive, right? So this will keep things random over here, and this will shuffle all of these numbers over here. Now, one thing that we want to make sure over here is that we only want, like, let's say if it's total cards are 16, we only want 16 cards to be inside this shuffled cards array. So what I'll do, I'll chain another function over here called slice. So what I'll say, starting from 0th index, we want to take all of the cards till this index, total cards, right? So total cards. Okay, that validation is also done. Then we will say dot map. So why we are doing this over here? So right now we had a simple array like this, let's say 1, 2, 4, 5, something like that, right? But we don't want this basically. What we want an array with multiple different objects, and each object will be in this format. That is an ID, which can be any random ID, right? And the actual number belonging to that particular ID, right? Let's say if the number is 1, so that we can uniquely identify this number, because we're going to have duplicate numbers, right? So we want to, uniquely identify one single number inside of our board. So cool. So what I'll do over here, I'll take number and the index, and I'll transform this array, each and every item, into an object. So first, let's say ID, I'll just say index, and I'll have the number after this. And this should give us a shuffled array. Let's just try it out. Let's just console log this right over here. And what I'll do, as soon as our app loads, that is, we're going to use effect if the dependency array is empty. So this is the dependency array. If this is kept empty, this is going to be run only one single time. So I'll call our initialize game function right inside of it. But let's keep grid size inside of this dependency array so that every time grid size changes, it will shuffle the board again and we will start a brand new game. And you can see as soon as I've called this function, it has given us this console log over here. ID 0, number 1, ID 1, number 2, and you can see it has shuffled all of these. If I refresh our game again, you're going to see it's going to shuffle all of these numbers again inside of it, right? Great. So this is exactly what we wanted to create a board. Now we can go on and render all of these numbers inside of our game board. But first, obviously, we're just not supposed to keep console log over here, right? I'm going to store all of these shuffled cards inside of this set cards state. So I'll say set cards to be shuffled cards. And whenever the game starts, I will reset all of the other states over here as well. Like let's say set flipped, set solved, set 1 to be false. So we'll keep all of these values. I know I haven't discussed all of these values yet, but don't worry, I'll discuss them very soon. But all you need to know about is that whenever a new game starts, obviously these states will be reset. All right, let's go on and render them inside of our UI. So for our game board, I'm going to have a div over here. And inside this, we will render all of these cards. So this cards is this state right over here, right? So cards dot map. I will take one single card over here. I'll say return a div. Inside of this, I'll say card dot number, and let's just give it a key, a unique key of card dot key. Oops. Should be inside of curly braces. Let's see, we should have, yep, we can see we have random numbers over here. If I refresh this, you can see every time they will get shuffled right here. Amazing. And if I change this grid size, you can see with respect to the grid size, the numbers are generating as well. Great. So we have kind of crossed, first phase of our game. Let's style this game board over here. For this div, I'll say class name is going to be grid. Let's just keep it inside of the backticks since we will be keeping this dynamic as well. And I'll say gap is going to be 2 between them and margin bottom will be 4. Let's see. Okay, yeah, but we want them to be in different rows, right? So what I'll do, since these are dynamic values, I'll keep them inside of this style tag over here or style attribute. I'll say grid template columns. Right, so how many columns are going to be there? I'll say repeat how many times? Whatever's the grid size, right? So I'll have template string over here called grid size. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I want to give it the min and max value here as well. So min max is going to be, minimum will be 0 and maximum will be 1 fraction of the space, right? So this basically define how much space it's going to take. So 1 fraction means they will be equally divided amongst themselves. So let's see. Yep. Awesome. Now we can see our game board has started to take shape. Let's give it some width as well. It will be minimum width of 100%. So this is basically the width of the game board. And I'll say whatever's the grid size, I'll multiply it by 5.5. Like it depends on you, whatever you want to keep it over here. 5.5 rem. Yep. That looks good. You can adjust this, size with what you want. And basically I've kept min over here. It's because it's going to take the minimum of both of them. So if it's more than this, it will take the 100%, right? In mobile devices. Okay, let's style our cards as well. So I'll give it class name. First of all, I'll make it a square. So I'll say aspect square. So it will give it the aspect ratio of 1:1. Okay. I'll keep the display flex. Items are going to be vertically center and horizontally center as well. Text is going to be Excel. Font is going to be bold. We're going to give it some border radius of large, which is going to be around 0.5 rem. Cursor is going to be pointer, so that when we hover on this, we should see a pointer cursor. And let's keep a transition all over here, so that later on we will change the color as well, right? So it will smoothly transition. And duration of that transition is going to be 300 milliseconds. Background gray of 300 and some text gray of 400. Let's see how it looks. Amazing. This looks really good. Great. But now you can see we can see all of these numbers over here in the board, right? We need to hide these numbers. So let's go on and implement the logic for flipping all of the cards, right? Or not all of the cards, on the specific cards whenever we click on a particular card. So over here, I'll have a on click function. What happens when we click on a card? I will call a handle click function, right? So I'll say const handle click. Now we need to take care of a lot of edge cases over here as well, right out of the get-go. So first of all, we will check if the user has won the game or not. So if the game board is disabled or the user has won the game, so I'll say return. Simple enough, right? If that's the case, we will not move forward. But if that is not the case, then we will check. First of all, we will check if the first card has been flipped. And to keep a track of that, we will, keep it inside of this flipped over here, right? If you remember, this is going to be an array. So basically, whenever we flip a card, we will store the value inside of this particular array. And when we flip another card, we will store that over here as well. And then we will compare, right? So we will first check if it's empty or not. So if flipped is equals to, flip.length is equals to 0. If that is the case, if it's empty, then I'll say set flipped and I'll push one single value inside of it. That is the current value. So we will take the ID from over here, right? Handle click. So over here, I'll say on click and I will call handle click with the current card. So card.key. Sorry, card.id, not card.key. Over here as well, card.id, not the key. Inside the handle click, I'll take this ID and store inside of the set flipped, right? And I'll say return. Simple enough. Now what happens when a card is flipped? So I'll create a function over here is flipped. So basically this function will determine if that particular card is flipped or not. And with respect to that, we will put some styles here. So I'll take a particular ID and we will check if flipped dot includes this particular ID, right? Let's take this is flipped and over here inside of this, instead of card dot number, now I'll say is flipped and I'll provide it with the card dot ID here. And I'll check if it's flipped, then render card dot number, else render question mark. So now by default, we will see question mark over here. And when we click on a card, we can see 7 right now. Great. Let's give it some bluish color whenever we click on it. Let's just keep it inside of a backtick. So all of these classes, I'll keep them inside of curly brace and a backtick. And over here as well, I'll check if this particular card is flipped or not. So I'll say is flipped. I'll keep it inside of the template string. I'll say is flipped question mark. If it's flipped, then I'll simply say background blue to be 500, text white, right? Else we will take this thing over here and we will say or this color. Oops, let's just keep it double quotes. Okay, let's see if I click on this one. Yup, let's just refresh it again. If I click on over here, yup, you can see now our first card is flipped. We cannot click on any other card because right now the flipped has some value, right? So it won't move past this particular condition over here. So let's write the code after it. So after it, now I want to check if flipped dot length is equals to 1. That is, it should just have one single card, right? So that we can compare it with the upcoming card and decide if they match or they do not match. So first of all, I'll say set disabled to be true, so that we are not able to flip a third card over here, right? And now I can check if the ID is not equals to the flipped of 0. First of all, we are comparing. It should not be the same cards, right? Else it won't be any point. So we are comparing them with their ID. So oops, it should be not equals to flipped of 0. Yeah, if that is not the case, then I can simply add set flipped, take whatever's inside of it. So dot flipped, and I can add this new ID that we are getting over here, right? And then after that, we can, check the match over here. So I'll just say check match logic. We're going to come back to this. But if both of them are same, if we have clicked on same button twice, I'll say set flipped to be an empty array and set disabled to be false. Okay, so far so good. Let's go on and test out our app. If I click on over here, if I click on this again, it's going to disable it. But if I click on over here, if I click on some other board, other card of the board, now you're going to see our board is disabled unless we make a decision over here that these cards match or do not match, right? So it won't work out anyways. So let's go on and write this check match logic as well. So I'll create a function. Let's just create it right above it, const check match. And this check match is going to be taking the second ID. So we will be calling this right over here, check match with the second ID, that is this ID right here. Great. So inside this check match, I'll first take the first ID as well, right? So I'll say const equals flipped, and to take the first ID, let's just say first ID. Doing this will take whatever that is the first child of this flipped array inside this first ID variable. Okay, now I'll check if cards, we have this cards array, right? If you remember this cards array over here, I'll fetch the number with respect to that particular ID. So I'll say if card of first ID dot number is equals to the cards of second ID dot number. Here we are comparing to see if they match or not. If they do, I'll say set solved, and this set solved array now comes into picture, right? As soon as these are getting solved, we will keep pushing all of these elements inside this solved array. So I'll say set solved, and we will take whatever that's already inside of this array and we will push both of them. So first ID and second ID. And since this move has been done, I'll say set flipped to be empty now and set disabled to be false. We don't want our board to be disabled anymore. Else, if that is not the case, if they are not same, then I'll say set timeout. We will give some timeout of 1 second over here. So let's just say 1000 milliseconds, right? After 1 second, I'll say set flipped to be an empty array and set disabled to be false. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay. For some reason, it's not working. What's wrong? Let's just refresh our app. Yep. Now it's working. Okay. You can see when they're not matching, we can't do anything. But let's say if they do match 1 and 1, okay, it didn't do anything. Oh, it's because we have done set flipped to empty and set solved. We have now pushed it inside of the solved. So we need to make this come into picture, this solved array, and this solved array will basically turn them green, right? So let me show you how we can do that. So over here, first of all, is flipped. We want to keep them flipped if we have something inside of this solved. So I want to say is flipped is equals to flipped dot includes ID, or I'll say solved dot includes ID, right? This, and for solved, I'll have a separate case over here is solved function. It will take the ID similar to that and simply say solved dot includes this ID. This will be used for, basically styling them green. Okay. Yeah, I think this works. Let's just go on over here where we have added this is flipped. So now over here, I'll say is solved as well. I'll provide the card dot ID here. If it's solved, then I will have some other styles here. Else I'll have background blue 500. So if it's solved, I'll say green. And yeah, I think this should work. Let's go back and see. 4, 5, 2, 1, 2, 2. Amazing. You can see now they are being solved. Awesome. Now the only thing remaining is to write the winner's logic. So let's calculate our winner. Let's just keep the board size of 2 for now, just so that we can, see the winner easily. So yeah, in this case, now the board has been solved. So now it should trigger, you have won. So, okay, let's first go on right here in the result and I'll create a div. Inside this, I'll write a message, you won, which will only be displayed if one state is true. So 1 and, right? So if you remember, we create this 1, which is false by default. It will only show up if this one state is true. Let's just keep it true by default. And you can see we can see this U1. Let's just give this some class name, margin top to be 4, some text to be 4XL, 4XL size, font to be bold, text is going to be green 600, and we will add some animation of bounce. Let's see. Yep, something like that. Amazing. Let's just put it back to 1. Now we cannot see. Great. And after that, we will have the reset and play button here as well. So I'll say button. Inside this, by default, it will show reset, but I'll add a condition. So if we have won the game, it should show play again, else it should show reset. Let's see. Okay. And this button will basically have the class name of margin top 4, some padding horizontal to be 4, some padding vertical to be 2, background is going to be green 500, text white, border radius is going to be 0.25 rem, so rounded. And when we hover on it, background will be green 600. Let's have a look. Yep, that is what we want. Cool. Let's go on and first add the logic for U1 condition. So I'll come down over here. I'll say use effect. I'll create a empty use effect over here. Inside the dependency array, I'll add the solved array and the cards array. Whenever these changes, this will be triggered. So I'll check if solved dot length is equals to cards dot length. That is, all of the cards are inside of this solved array now, right? That basically means that we have completed the game. And the cards dot length has to be more than 0, right? It should not be less than 0 or empty. So I'll say set 1 to be true. Okay, let's find out. Let's just keep our grid size to be 2 so that it's easier for us. So 1, 2, and amazing. You have 1. If we click on play again, oh, we have not added the reset logic, but it will be nothing. The reset logic will be just calling this initialize game function over here. So I'll just say on click, I'll just call this initialize game. And now if we just keep it 2 again, and let's just do this and click on play again, amazing. Our board has been reset. Awesome. So we have successfully created this memory game, but there's one more thing that that guy mentioned in our Discord, that the interviewer also asked him to keep limited moves list as well. And that looks something like this. So we can keep, if it's 0, then there are unlimited moves. If it's 5, let's say, now if let's just keep it grid size to be 2. So I'll just keep it like that. Let me just make some wrong moves. And now you can see the moves are over and the game is over as well. So this is a very interesting use case, and I will encourage you guys to go and try it out yourself. If you're not able to do it, I've solved this max moves condition in my front-end interview preparation course. So you can click the link in the description down below and check out that course. And I know some people will say that why are you not explaining it right over here? So try to understand, I have a premium community as well, and I want to keep some things exclusive for them as well, right? If I wanted, I could have kept this entire video for my course only, but I discussed the major part of this video over here, and this small part is for the premium community, right? So definitely, if you're interested, you can go and check it out by clicking the link in the description down below, and subscribe to the channel for more such awesome interview preparation videos.